Well, good afternoon and welcome to this special presentation this afternoon with ProTrade United and our valued partners from RCR Lawyers in Brisbane, but also serving the country as a whole. It's great to have Paul Rojas, who's one of the leading partners with RCR, on board with us today to talk about some of the nitty-gritty that's going on at the moment in that interesting space with the growth and the almost explosion of what's happening in the construction industry at the moment, and particularly dancing around the whole COVID-19 as well. So great to have Paul on board. G'day, Paul.
Hi, John. How are you? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. Excellent. It's exciting to partner up with you again and to be able to deliver some great value to clients in the ProTrade community. For those of you who want to have a look at who we are, that put a face to the voices that are on the other end of the microphones. It's great to have you on today, and Paul will have a little chat about his role with RCR shortly. And for those of you I've met, terrific. My name's John. For those of you I haven't, my name's John, and I'm the founder and CEO of ProTrade United. And the great thing about bringing, I guess, ideas, concepts, and resources and connections to the trading and construction industries, we get to partner with some great people like Paul and his team as well. But we've got a lot to cover through today, and I'm excited about what Paul is going to share. Just before we do get going, just to get a little bit of bit of housekeeping, for want of a better word. We're going to be really content rich today, and also an opportunity for you to contribute or ask questions or share some of your experiences as well. You'll find a little control panel that shoots up usually on the right hand side of your screen, and what I'd love if you could do so is if you can hear me and you can see the screen okay, click the hand waving button. That'll give me an indication that you're on the call. And if you could just type into the box, that would be great, the type of business that you have and whereabouts you're located. As you know, we've got clients all over Australia and New Zealand, and it'd be great to just get some context about where people are dialing in from today, and also what you're looking forward to, of the areas that we're going to cover off, and particularly it's almost like a maze of what's happening in the contract space in the construction industry now. If there's one thing that you would find valuable from your time with us today, we'd love to have you tap that into the box. That would be terrific. So if you could type into that, that'd be great. Who we've got on the call? We've got g'day Michael from Geelong down in Victoria. Lovely. Rojas, correct me. That's a unique name there, but I trust that I've pronounced that correctly. From got plumbing and gas from in South Australia. Lovely. G'day Matt Clare, one of our great clients in Melbourne, who's got a security system installed as well. Jane, g'day Jane from Spanner Plumbing in Brisbane as well. Great to have you on there. G'day Brad. G'day Mark from New Zealand, Core Air Conditioning. Lovely. Clara, great to have you on from Reservoir in Melbourne, domestic builder. Brad, thanks for mentioning that you're in the reno and extension game as a builder. Nathan, hey there from Brisbane. Rise Constructions, one of our clients there. G'day Matt from Drifter Building on the Gold Coast and Brisbane as well. Hey Brad from Yarra Valley. Rob from Sydney. And we've got Jeff from Sydney, and also Katrina at the moment from Roof Bits on the Sunshine Coast. Great place. That's where I'm located, up here on the sunny coast. So, Paul, there's a good sweep of excited and engaged clients on the session here today to be able to chat about what we're going to as well. So what I'll do, Paul, is I'm going to hand over to you. I can keep a track of any questions that may come through, but I'm going to hand over to you to share your screen, and let me do that right now. And we will be away. So
sharing now, is it, John? Yeah.
You should be good to go. I'll minimize my screen. Just bear with the
So show my screen. Okay, yep, I think that's working now.
We've got yours there front and center. And again, guys, give us a thumbs up and say yes, all loud and clear if you can see Paul's screen there. But I'll hand it over to you. I'll mute myself, but I'll take notes of any questions that may come through, and we can address those at the end. I'll leave it to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, John, for the intro. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. Just a bit about myself. As John's explained before, I'm a partner at RCR Lawyers. My specialty is commercial litigation, so commercial litigation lawyer. Within commercial litigation, you can appreciate I do a lot of construction and solvency, particularly in construction. As you all know, construction is I guess the biggest industry with the highest number of disputes and highest number of insolvency events, and it is the one industry in Australia which feeds off other industries. Other industries feed off the construction progress. There are numerous industries that are reliant on construction itself. What I'll be talking about is the hot topic which hasn't gone away, which is COVID-19, and how this particular global pandemic has affected our everyday life, in particular our businesses, and how it's affected the construction industry. So with the World Health Organization declaring COVID-19 pandemic early last year, we're in this new norm. We're in this new kind of phase in our lives where lockdowns are just a usual part of our everyday living. You know, currently at the moment, we've got New South Wales, which is still in lockdown. We've still got Victoria, which is still in lockdown. You know, we have to become more conscious with social distancing. You know, we've got the 1.5 meter distancing rule in place. We have to check into restaurants with QR codes. Hand sanitizer is just a usual part of everyday lives these days, and more importantly now we have to count the number of people in a particular closed-in space, whether it's lifts or restaurants or a business or so forth. So with COVID-19 not going away in the near future, it seems like it's going to be a couple of years before things get under control. As a business owner, you need to put in place the right processes and strategies for your business, and so you can effectively deal with the challenges that COVID presents. And that's what we'll be talking about today. That's what we're going to cover in this presentation. We're going to offer you some tips on how you can protect your business and how your business can adapt to the challenges faced by COVID. Now, as John said, happy to answer any questions as we go along. John, you can raise any questions for me, or otherwise we can answer any questions at the end. It's quite informal. But
sure.
We'll get.
And listen, sorry, Paul, I might just mention, there's a Mark from New Zealand's probably going, well, we're all good here. I don't know what you guys are carrying on about, but Mark, I'm going to encourage you, even though you're in New Zealand, and but it's about just observing and paying attention to what aspects could be beneficial for you where you are, and also getting the appropriate guidance and support at the end as well. So don't need to switch off just because you're all good over in New Zealand. It's also about being aware of other things that could be taking place as well. So yeah. Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to add that so Mark could.
Yeah, no problem. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so today's agenda, as I said, part A, we're dealing with just a brief overview of the impacts of COVID-19. You know, particularly in the construction industry, with a focus on the two main disruptions that we see in the construction industry from COVID-19 is the supply chain disruption, and we see the increase in cost of materials. Those are the two biggest factors which are affecting the construction industry as a result of COVID. Just let's say that. The next part we'll be going through is just a brief overview on how you can protect your business in 2021. So we're looking at how you can effectively safeguard your business from supply chain disruptions. We're looking at how to protect your profits and your margins from price increase of material costs. And then we've got some tips on how you can do some due diligence on the party who you're contracting with. All right, so let's just get into the overview of COVID. You can see there on the slide, these statistics are from a study conducted by HIA in April 2021, and there was another study by the Galley Group in January this year. So supply chain disruptions, you got 82% of builders have reported delays with suppliers. This resulted obviously in delays in the project and additional costs, particularly in circumstances you got builders with liquidated damages clauses and so forth. They haven't, in some circumstances, they haven't factored in a delay because of suppliers. How's that going to affect the completion date on a particular project? And that's what we look at. And then you got the material costs. So you've had a 12% increase in steel for slabs, increase from 11,500 to 12,160 for the cost of frames, and a 15% increase in landscape supplies. Often construction companies absorb these increasing costs. Even increase in plywood has been a big thing as well as a result of the numerous fires throughout Australia last year. Has also had a strain on the construction industry for plywood and being able to export that from overseas. So where does this leave us? So we've got a situation as a result of COVID that we've got the issue of the ongoing dilemma of supply and demand. So you've got builders who are experiencing significant supply shortages, and you're creating a bottleneck within the building industry. So you got a number of factors which are causing this bottleneck. You got a global surge in demand for building materials, but at the same time you got the global supply chain disruptions due to COVID. You're not getting those suppliers as quickly as you used to as a result of all the number of delays and restrictions. You've got local surge in new home builds and renovations. The government, in trying to stimulate the economy, they're offering the homeowners grants, they're offering the renovation grants. They're trying to keep the construction industry going, mainly because of what I mentioned before was that many other different industries rely heavily on construction progress to feed off these other industries. You still got repair works from ongoing disasters such as the hailstorms of Brisbane, Rockhampton in 2020. So you got a lot of contractors which are booked up to do these repairs. Again, which cause a huge strain on supply and demand. Another factor which has been a big thing is that these lockdowns and these restrictions on going overseas, you got a lot of travel and tourism spending power, which usually mums and dads and families would go overseas on a holiday. They can't go anymore. So what they're doing is they're spending money on their house. They're renovating their house. They're getting the deck that they thought they were not going to do in the near future. They're spending money, and they're spending money on their homes. So this has caused an increase in pricing for properties. Going along with the record low interest rates, it has caused a huge surge in demand in construction. With that said, what has happened recently in terms of further restraints on construction, which again is going to cause the domino effect in the industry, is latest updates with New South Wales. I'm sure you're all aware that 2 days ago the government announced that there will be a 2-week pause ordered on all construction work. So this is anticipated to cost the city millions and millions of dollars. Whether or not it was the right decision, it's hard to say, considering the circumstances. There's several outbreaks in Sydney, in the Greater Sydney area, which has caused the government to make this decision. It's a big thing, which as New South Wales is heavily reliant on the construction industry, it's going to cause a domino effect in other states as well. In Victoria. Sorry, just to step back on that point in relation to how the New South Wales government is dealing with this, particularly in circumstances where we don't have JobKeeper anymore. That was turned off around March, April this year. What they have announced a couple of days ago as well is that the New South Wales government is providing further one-off payments to help businesses and sole traders. So they're providing one-off payments of about $7,500 and $15,000 are available to eligible businesses, depending on the decline in turnover experienced during its restrictions. So there is some mechanisms in place to try to help those businesses which let's face it, they can't sit around for 2 weeks. You know, they don't have JobKeeper. They can't sit around 2 weeks, and how they're meant to be able to keep these works going. In terms of Victoria, as we all know, Victoria suffered a very long lockdown last year and is still trying to recover in the construction industry. In April 2021, the Victorian government temporarily adjusted the management of construction activity in Melbourne. This adjustment allows for builders to submit a proposal for extended working hours, so including 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturdays, and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays. So this is anticipated to fast-track projects, save jobs, and help deal with the economic impact of COVID. So what the Victorian government's trying to do is that, you know, you can't have X number of people on sites anymore due to the 1.5 meter distancing rule. So rather than having 10 or 15 guys on site in a limited restricted area, or 20 or 30 guys on site, they're doing staggered shifts in order to deal with the you know, the social distancing rules which are in place now by the government. So now that we know what the current challenges are, we need to look at how you can implement strategies and systems to protect your business from some of the negative impacts of COVID. So we're looking at the issue of supply chains, we're looking at the issue of restrictions, and looking at the issues of cost escalations. So turning back to the issue of supply chain disruptions, having a greater understanding of your supply chain will enable your business to anticipate COVID-19 issues and to respond cohesively to those issues well before they materially impact a project. So every business should sit down. They should, you know, draw yourself a little diagram, and you work out your supply chain. You know, you work out, you know, are you a builder? Are you a subcontractor? Are you a supplier? You know, if you're a builder or a subcontractor, or so, for example, if you're a builder, where do you get your suppliers from? Do you get your suppliers from the one supplier? Do your suppliers come from overseas, or do you source it locally? You know, do you have a fallback supplier? These are the kind of questions you need to start asking yourself, so that if you're entering into a contract and you have a completion date, that you can ensure that you have fallback provisions in place in circumstances where the particular supply of materials that you're relying upon are not delivered in time. So that in a nutshell is kind of what a supply chain is. I'll just read you a brief definition for those who do not understand what a supply chain is or have not heard of the term before. In basic terms, a supply chain is a network between a company and its suppliers to produce and to distribute a specific product or service. The functions of supply chain include product development, marketing, operations, distribution, finance, and customer service. So that's what I'm trying to explain in a little table that you see on the slides here, is that these are kind of factors you need to be mindful of in your supply chain. So you want to enhance the visibility of supply chain materials. You want to conduct what we call a supply chain vulnerability audit. That's what I was saying before. Like, you know, do you have backup suppliers? Do you only work with the one supplier, or do you have multiple suppliers that you can source from? You want to factor in the logistical constraints and time delays into schedules, including the EOTs, which are your extension of time clauses. You want to maintain an open lines of communication with all relevant stakeholders. And to protect yourself, you want to enhance the flexibility of supply chain. You know, you want to review your terms, conditions, make sure you get them right. You know, if you're dealing with a supplier and the materials cannot be delivered within time, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in that contract. You know, you want to have the option to terminate if and when required. If appropriate, build up levels of inventory, source locally, diversify your suppliers, you know, use tiered suppliers and so forth. Okay, so that brings us back to the next part of the slide, which is protecting your profits from price increasing. So you may want to consider reviewing your standard form contracts and including clauses that accommodate increased material costs during the pandemic and the overall pricing of the project. You know, most circumstances that you show the statistics that I presented at the beginning is that most builders are just factoring into their price. They're just wearing the costs. But if you have a contract with a clause that allows you to increase your cost of materials in circumstances where it's outside of your control, that's something that you should be mindful of, and including in your special conditions in your standard form contracts. You know, it might be a small cost, but if you're doing multiple projects over a period of time, those small costs do add up. That's something that you should be thinking about. So what I've provided there in the slide is just a standard clause that can be included in your contract. This is quite a general clause. You need to look at, you know, what your business does and what works it carries out to ensure that the particular clause for cost escalations actually suits your particular project and what you're trying to achieve. But happy to circulate these slides as well, John, so everyone knows. So if they want to have a look at that or any questions afterwards, I'm happy to shoot an email on a particular clause or anything that you need. You're happy for you to shoot me an email about it afterwards if you like.
Thanks, Paul. And I did mean to mention that, you know, everyone will get a recording on this as well. So any of the slides that Paul's talking about today, you'll get a chance to review them again, even with other people on your team. So thank you, Paul.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so moving along, protecting your business. So look, we've touched on the issue of COVID, you know, and how COVID has caused a strain on the construction industry. You know, you got issue of supply chain disruptions. You got issue of increase in price of materials, and then you got issues of restrictions. So when you sit back and you think about it, how can you deal with these issues in the sense of protecting your business? So what can you do to protect your business in these terms? And you have to sit back and you have to think about going back to the basics. You know, you need to look at your contract. You need to look at your terms and conditions. So you review your contract, you review your terms and conditions, and when you're doing it, ask yourself the question, you know, does my contract or my terms and conditions protect me in circumstances where there are delays outside of my control? You know, does my contract or terms and conditions protect me in circumstances where there are increasing costs outside of my control? Does my contract or terms and conditions protect me in circumstances where there are restrictions in place to carry out the works which are outside of my control? These are the three things that you need to be mindful of. If your contract doesn't protect you in those circumstances, well, then you should look at amending your contract to suit the current conditions that we're dealing with at the moment. So some of the main clauses that you should be looking at, which I've identified in the slide there for you, is the force majeure clause. You know, does it cover a pandemic event? You know, you want to have it specific. You know, what we've done for a lot of our clients at the moment is that, you know, you do have standard force majeure clauses in your contracts, but to avoid any misunderstandings as to what that clause means or miscommunications, you want to include a pandemic event includes circumstances of COVID-19, for example. You want to have cost escalation clauses to protect your profits, which were touched on previously before. You want to have clauses that permit an extension of time on account of delays, supply chains, delivery of materials, shortages of building materials. You know, you want to have a clause that permits an extension of time due to COVID restrictions, lockdowns, social distancing, etc. As I was saying before, you know, the government took a great initiative in Victoria in extending the working hours for construction. You know, but that was a classic example where it wasn't possible for contractors to reach practical completion under the terms of the contract if they couldn't have the right number of contractors on site to carry out the works. You got a clause that permits the substitution of a particular building material where there are shortages or delays. You want to know your contract. You know, so you want to understand your contract, know where your rights are and what you need to do to enforce your rights. You know, the key, which is noted there, is open lines of communication with stakeholders. You know, communication is the key. It's you know, it's when you stop communicating with a particular party is when the party starts getting cautious and might want to consider issuing proceedings. Communications can avoid any unnecessary disputes. Okay, and the last part which I touch on is something which I've spoken about previously before in previous presentations, but now more than ever it's something that, again, you should be mindful of. It's more of just a recap on what you should do when entering into your terms and conditions is basically to know who you're contracting with. And now more than ever, you should be considering that. You know, just it's always the basic little mistakes which cause the potential for somebody to raise a defence if you're trying to claim a simple payment of funds, for example. So, if you're entering into a contract, the classic example I see all the time is that you see a number of building companies that have, for example, their company may be called ABC Construction, and then they might have another company called ABC Development. They might have another company called ABC Projects or ABC Group. So they've just hold a whole bunch of different companies with a very similar name. Make sure you contract with the entity which you're meant to be contracting with. If you can, get the ACN number, because the last thing you want to do is file a claim or do a progress claim or so forth, and a defence is raised on a basis that you pretty much have issued against the wrong entity, which happens more often than not. License searches, this is for QBCC, which is Queensland. You can do license searches in other states depending on the regulated industry that you're in. It's important to see who you're contracted with in terms of whether there are any money owed complaints on that particular contractor, whether they have any demerit points that have been taken as a result of various things. There's something for you to be mindful of in your due diligence. Property and title searches, always important. If you're dealing with a developer, you want to make sure that the developer has the registration of the land, whether the land's encumbered or unencumbered. These are things you need to be mindful of. Directors' guarantees, depending on how large your project is or the contract sum, you may want to consider having directors' guarantees in place. If you're a supplier, you want to consider having charges in place under the Personal Property Securities Act. So that pretty much is in a nutshell, John. If anyone has any questions or anything at all, it's happy to answer anything now, or otherwise, if they want to shoot me an email or so forth, I can go through things later on in time.
Yeah, listen, definitely, Paul. I think there's, it was brief but powerful, and there's a couple of questions that have come up. One of the things I just wanted to sort of get your insight into is particularly, we work with builders and we also work with contractors who, contract to builders. And from a contracting perspective, it's interesting where we talk about, sometimes contractors who, work with builders feel like the builders have an upper hand. And I really want to, get your point of view that it's always a two-way street, because the contracts are in the place to support and protect each entity. And I think that what I've experienced is when you've got a contractor who wants to approach a builder with a works contract, they're feeling like, well, who am I to be able to go to my builder and who I'm working with and say, listen, I've adjusted my quotations or I've adjusted my contracts and I'd like you to review them. How do you, just your insight there about how do you approach those conversations? Because, it can be a delicate issue, but if you got mutual respect with each other, how would you suggest that someone approaches, say, a builder to say, listen, I've changed my contracts, love you to look at them and make sure that we're both on the same page?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question, John. And this is something that happens all the time. And something I always talk to clients about is that, I can give you the legal perspective on what you should and should include in your contract, but then there's a commercial reality that, and you as your business as a subcontractor, is whether you can actually get a particular builder to agree to those terms and conditions. You get some builders who say, these are my terms, take it or leave it. And you get the circumstances, you got fallback provisions under the ACL for unfair contract terms if it gets to that point. But a lot of times, for subcontractors, they should really be looking at, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. You're simply just trying to protect yourself, protect your business. And particularly now with COVID, I'm not saying it's an excuse or anything, but it's a great reason to be able to use this and say, well, look, there are issues with COVID which are going to affect various factors, everything else, and this is the right time for me to revisit my terms and conditions and just have a frank discussion with the builder as to why these are included. And let's face it, in reality is that 9 times out of 10, when you have a builder and a subcontractor, if the developer has raised an issue with the construction works, the builder is always going to try to say the subcontractor's issue and is trying to bear off the responsibility or the liability. So that's something to just be mindful of in terms of, how are you going to ensure that you have protected yourself if you haven't necessarily implemented the right terms and conditions in place in case it does happen?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that, you know, we always want to say that at ProTrade, you know, that you want to be in a relationship either way, whether you're, you know, you're subcontracting or contracting with someone where there's mutual respect. You can have open and honest conversations about anything and everything to do with the projects. And that's
100%.
right down to nitty gritty of the contracts.
Is exactly right, and that ties in with what I was saying at the very end of the presentation. Know who you contracted with, and particularly in the construction industry. Let's face it, there are a lot of rogues in the industry, which sometimes it's best not to deal with that particular person or particular builder and so forth. For example, if you have a large building company that's won't allow you to have a director's guarantee for some reason, well, then you start asking your question whether you actually want to contract with that person in the first place.
100%.
Because it's listed more and more these days.
Yeah, and listen to that too. Like if someone's, you know, says, "Oh, mate, leave it with me and I'll have a look at it," but then still expects you to go on and do the work without, you know, confirming that everything's okay. Well, you just got to listen to that. What's your intuition about this situation? And maybe it's not the best relationship to be in.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So listen, Nathan and Matt have both asked great questions here. So Matt's got a residential construction business, and Nathan's also got a residential construction business. And the questions were almost identical. So thanks, guys. It's the note on protecting the profits. You know, how could you be open and transparent with the customer or the client about the increase in material pricing, and how could the owner be confident to know that they're not being ripped off, for example, and Matt asked, you know, what's the best way to show proof to the client that actually material and labour prices have gone up? Because I put myself in the homeowner space, you know, I've had a contract, but it does say that if there's increase in materials or delays, I may want to go, well, can you show me proof of that? So Paul, what would you say from their perspective is the best way to, you know, be transparent and open and show that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and sometimes, you know, it's difficult if you're dealing with residential to show a homeowner what your material costs are and everything else, because you're simply just given a contract price. But if you have a particular concern on particular materials which may have an increase, you know, I'm sure that you already have worked out a rough summary of the cost of that particular material. If you can have a record of that, and if there has been a spike on that particular material, say a month or two later, you know, sometimes this talks about the open lines of communication. If you can just explain to the homeowner and show them the record of the increase in price, it's a lot easier for them to understand and for them to be able to swallow the idea that it's going to cost more for the works. But again, you need to have that particular clause. I've just gone back to the slide. I'm not sure if you're still sharing that slide, John. You need to have that particular clause like we've got in a slide there in place.
Yes, yes.
And I'll just read it for everyone's benefit because it's important, and it talks about I guess it's the reality of it's got to be a clause it's got to be mutually understanding for both parties, and it talks about the equitability to be adjusted by change. So just the first part I read to you is that in the event of a significant delay in supply of materials to the contractor or price increases of materials occurring during the performance of the contract through no fault of the contractor, the contract sum, time of performance, and contract requirements shall be equally adjusted to change in accordance with the procedures of the contract documents. And it goes through how. So it's, you know, it's something it's been used more and more these days, but it's all about it's got to be equal and fair. Like, you know, you're not gonna get someone to agree to a clause unless you're open and transparent about how much the cost of materials are. If you're going to have a clause in there without giving any kind of transparency as to what the cost of materials are, what the increase might be, well, then you're going to find it very difficult that person to sign that contract.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And Jeff's asked, based on that slide there, what's a reasonable percentage increase before that can sort of trigger that? Like you've got those blank spaces there in the slide that's, you know, an item increases. What, in your experience, Paul, is fair and reasonable as a percentage increase?
Well, if you look at, I'm just taking it back to the very beginning of the slide, the material costs. So this is as a result of COVID, there's been a 12% increase in steel slabs. cost of frames, 50% increase in landscape suppliers. So there already is a 12-15% increase already happening. That's something that that's already proven by studies and by statistics. So a 15%, 15-20% increase, that's something you might want to include in there. That seems to be the average norm these days. Anything over and above, you might want to, I guess it depends on, it would be depending on the builder himself as to, what has, and everyone should know by their own knowledge of what's been doing at the moment in the industry, is that what's been the average percentage increase. We've got from studies 12 to 15%, but I might have a particular builder that says, you know what, it's cost me an extra 20% for suppliers for a particular supplier of materials, and that might be accepted in that particular part of Australia, so forth. So it really depends on a number of different factors.
I think, listen, if I could add to that, it's depending on what the materials actually are. In some situations, a 2 or a 3% increase could be totally significant if it's a large component of a build. If it's a small component of a build, you might be able to have a bit of flex time, flexibility with that. But I think that, for example, concrete or framing or electrical or some of the major components, because that has been quite significant, then the lower percentage that you put in there probably gives you a bit more cover. There's things, think about, traditionally inflation is what, 2 to 3%, over a 12-month period. But if you're talking about a build which could happen over 3 to 6 months, and you get a 2% or a 3% trigger, all of a sudden the margin could be eradicated pretty quickly. So possibly, in working, with yourself, Paul, it's about coming up with what's fair and reasonable for the customer, and also which isn't going to expose the builder in this situation either.
No, I agree with that. It'd be the particular materials that you're thinking of, and also the location where you source those materials from, a location where you're actually carrying out the works.
Yes. And Matt's just got a little comment here. He said one of the things I was thinking is that our supplier could give us a letter show that what we were quoted when they priced the job, and what the material cost is when down the track if there had been delays as well. And I think Matt, that also shows that you're being open and transparent with the customer, which is really all they want. They don't want to pay any more for things, but you don't want to have to pay any more for things as well. And as long as you're being open and transparent with that communication, and they trust you with that, I think that's a great point there as well.
I was saying before is that having a record of the costs of what it was at a particular time you quoted. So whether it's an email, or if you got some kind of indication for supplier that's going to cost X amount of dollars on this particular time, you might have given the estimate as of today, so 21st of July, but you don't start carrying out the works until 3 months from now. If there has been an increase, a further email from the supplier confirming that is going to put the homeowner's mind at rest.
Yeah, terrific. Because I was speaking to a client this morning who's an aluminium and glass fabricator, and he says, oh, we're definitely not wearing it. He says everybody has to understand that this is extraordinary times, and everybody needs to be able to share what's actually being experienced. And as the contractor, it's something that every person can't really afford to take on as well. So I think what you've mentioned there is super important. And Matt's got perfect. Thanks, guys. So thank you, Matt. So listen, I've got one other question here, but I wanted to open up to everybody that if you've got something on your mind, we're going to have an opportunity, by the way, to have a complimentary catch up with Paul and or his team shortly, and I'll share with you how you can take advantage of that. And Nathan's come through. And he says, is there anything that can be done on current contracts without this clause? I know the short answer is no, however, just thought I'd ask. We've lost a significant amount of money on current builds from these material increases. So, hey, listen, well, that tells me straight away that, there's some opportunity for review of those. But, yeah, Paul, in your experience, when things had started and then these changes have taken place, is there anything that guys can do?
Yeah, look, you can amend the contract, but it really depends on consent of both parties. So again, and unfortunately, we're in this industry where a lot of a lot of parties are taking advantage of the situation. They're saying, well, the contract speaks for itself. The terms are the terms. You know, that's the price. You know, that makes it very difficult for you to be able to try to have any kind of amendment to the contract for any price increases. But I would start by just having and this goes back to the open lines of communication, just sitting down, whether it's residential, it's a homeowner, or you're dealing with a developer, and just having a frank discussion with the party you've contracted with, and explaining to them, help them understand that you have had these increase in costs, and it has factored into your profit margin, your bottom line, and see if they're actually open to the idea of having an amendment to the contract. If they are, well then yes, it definitely can be inserted. It can be, and the contracts can be amended, but it really depends on getting that consent from the other side.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So even having some guidance around those conversations would be important as well. Matt's come back to Nathan to say, great question, Nathan. Nate's go, yep, thanks. Thought as much. So one of the things around these works contracts, Paul, is one of the things we share with clients is it's a form of insurance. One of the things is no one likes to pay too much for insurance, but you can also pay too little. and maybe do you have one or two examples of how the benefit of having these contracts refined and updated has helped clients, or maybe where something was missing in a contract and it's cost someone hundreds of, not just hundreds, thousands of dollars, but hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's a very valid point, John. There are a couple of examples I can give you, which we see all the time. I have clients or building clients that come to me. I might have prepared their terms and conditions, say 8 years ago, but they go and use that same contract terms and conditions for the last 8 years. In the last 8 years, their business has grown, has grown significantly, and the nature of the type of construction work they do is also changed. So that's why I always say to clients that you need to review your contracts, your terms and conditions every 12 months. You go see your accountant every 12 months to do your tax. Go sit down with your lawyer every 12 months and just review your terms and conditions, because your terms and conditions that were good 8 years ago may not necessarily apply to you at this current time, particularly now with COVID and everything else. But not just that, it's just the nature of the type of work may have moved to another area, or the turnover of your business is a lot more. You might have moved from resi to commercial. These are factors you need to have a think about when you're looking at your terms and conditions.
It's almost like still using the same insurance that you had 8 years ago, but your business has grown and you've tripled the size of the equipment that you want to cover off on, and you haven't done any updates.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to put it, John. I like that kind of analysis, because it's exactly right. You take out insurance cover 8 years ago, that insurance cover might not necessarily cover you or protect you 8 years from then. And classic example, you might void your insurance when you have a contract that doesn't protect you. Well, then that contract really there's no point having in the first place if your business has changed so much that it's not going to protect you. And the second part of saying that, John, is that you get clients who they might get a contract done, or they might download a contract from master builders or HIA or Australian standard contract, the industry standard contracts. But it's no point having a contract if you don't understand how the contract works. And at that point, a contract just doesn't blanket protect you. You need to understand when and how you should exercise your rights under the contract. As a classic example we see all the time, I've got clients who come to me with a AS contract, they're doing a development, but they have the right to issue a extension of time clause under the contract, but they haven't done it within time. So if they haven't done it within time, well then you can't issue it later on down the track. Or if you're on the other side of the coin and someone has issued you with an extension of time clause and you don't agree with it, you need to issue a notice of dispute within time. If you don't do that within time, well then you're deemed to have accepted the EOT claim. So these are things that you need to be mindful of. It's all well and true to have a contract, but to understand how the contract works, know the rules of the contract, the project is it's very important.
And can I just ask on that, because a lot of the times people may have these standard contracts from, say, HIA or master builders.
Yep.
How much can they be modified and adapted, particularly if it's open and transparent with the client, to sort of make it, mutually beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, look, industry standard contracts are a very good, a good base. I've covered this before with different clients and different presentations I've done. Is that, because the construction industry is the most regulated industry in Australia, we have what we call as industry standard contracts. So master builders, HIA, QBCC, Australian standards. They cover the bare minimum which needs to be covered pursuant to the legislation that applies to your particular state. So when you have for example, like a master builder's contract, you can amend the contract to suit your business within the special conditions. You can include things in there. There was a study that was done a number of years ago that, I think from memory, there was over 80% of builders use industry standard contracts, but then from that, it was over 85% of those builders amend those terms and conditions to suit their particular business and their requirements.
Interesting, really. That's great to know, because I think there's quite a number of people out there who think, well, I've got this contract from Master Builders or HIA, and that's it, can't touch it. But the reality is that it's understanding that, as you said, do you understand what it says and how it relates to you, and what your risks are, and also what your obligations are, and what areas could you potentially adjust? And that's where having a chat with someone like yourself could be definitely a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, you see a classic example. I've had clients who they go and copy and paste terms and conditions from a whole bunch of different contracts, and they try to create their own. And when they come to see me, it's a disaster, because they might be in breach of their own contract from the very beginning, because they've had a clause which they've taken from another contract or another project, which doesn't necessarily apply to them. That's why it's very important to really understand how your contract works, understand your business and what you do, and understand how your contract is actually going to help you achieve that particular project.
Yeah, so good, so good. Well, listen, what I'm going to do now, Paul, I'm going to just pop up a little. One of the things that part of our great relationship with Paul and the team at RCR is that there's definitely some great stories of some of our clients who've used Paul and his team to support them as they're growing and evolving their business. And as part of being on this session, we're going to give you an opportunity, if you'd like to have a complimentary catch-up with Paul or his team to review your contracts. I've popped up a poll on the screen there. Paul, can you see that?
Yeah, do I click on must close the poll? Okay.
No, I'll take care of that. You might want to click on, would you like someone to review your contracts? But guys, if you've got that, please click on either yes, no. If you're unsure, then one of the team might touch base with you just to share a little bit more about that. But again, as I said, you can pay too much, but you can also pay way too little, or try and do it yourself. And as you said, there's some horror stories, Paul, of what people have attempted to do on their own. Whilst you're typing away that, here's one of the things I'd love you to consider about what's been valuable today. What's been your take home? We'll keep this up for another 10 seconds or so. What's a take home? What's something that has been super valuable for you today that we can share back with Paul? I'll give you another 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and I'll close that. Thank you, guys. And if you've ticked yes or unsure, one of the guys will be in touch to have a chat to you about how you progress and move forward with that. But what I'd love to hear, if you could just go into the chat box or where you typed your questions, is what's been most valuable today? What's been your take home that has made sitting on, listening to Paul and myself have a chat and a conversation? And also thanks to the guys who posed the questions. That's been terrific. Thanks, Matt and Nathan there as well, and also Jeff. So just to let you know, Paul, here the guys, good to get some wording to add into the contracts, also keen to update some of the terms and conditions with advice from RCR, of course. Updating the wording for delays and price rising is there as well. Great to know that what you can do with your clauses. They use master builders. They do have special conditions, so definitely proceeding, with this for future contracts there. Price variation, I think that's been the real key there, Paul. So, listen, thank you again, my friend, for being with us today. Some of you may have heard Paul chat with one of your groups that you've been part of before, so you also know who he is. But listen, thanks again for sharing today. Very valuable, very timely as well with what we're experiencing in the marketplace. Any final little maybe words around what people can expect when they have a catch up with yourself?
Yeah, look, John, as we always do as our commitment to ProTrade, we always offer a 30-minute non-obligation consult to any ProTrade member. Happy to sit down and give you an overview of your terms, conditions, or even just your business and see what you may need or not need, for example, policies and procedures in place. I mean, we're really just as a commitment to, as I said, to ProTrade members to help yourselves with your business. I remember a particular moment, John, I think it was the year before last at the ProTrade presentations that you do every year. A gentleman came up to me and he shook my hand and said, "Paul, you probably don't remember me, but I listened to one of your presentations and I called you and you gave me a 5-10 minute advice and it worked so well. I thank you so much." And that's what we're here for. We're here to help yourselves. Whether or not it's going to be something that we end up doing something down the track or not, or just a simple off-the-cuff advice, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, lovely there. And a couple of other thanks for putting it on. It's a great takeaway, director's guarantees, particularly from those guys who are probably contractors as well. So the comments are keep coming through here. So good on you, Paul. And listen, I look forward to seeing you. If I don't see you beforehand, I'll talk to you at our awards gala at the end of August too.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds great.
It's almost like our annual catch up for a drink, which
yeah, looking forward to it, definitely. Yeah.
Which is great. All right, listen, thanks everybody for being on the session today. The team from RCR will be in touch if you've ticked yes for that opportunity. Continue to be diligent, take care out there, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thanks, John. Thank you, everyone.